Hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Mic check, mic check. Here we are. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So, what are we doing? Where are we? What are we doing? So, checking out GraphQL. Gonna mess with the um, interface there so that we can dump out the data from GraphQL and call data flows from GraphQL. So, what are we doing? So, uh, dffml service dev create. Okay, so we are creating a new entity. We don't have an entity template yet, and we're just going to call her Alice. We'll just call her Alice. Um, is that PyPy name? Yeah, somebody's got it. 2010. Maybe we can ask them to change. Hmm. Release 2021. Hey. Ah, hey, great. 2 years ago. Maybe we can ask them if we can have this. Okay. Okay. We're going to get rid of some files that we don't need because right now we're set up as a mono repo. All right, let's see. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Looks good. Okay, I don't think we have a top level license, so I think we'll be good here. Or well, we're gonna, yeah, okay, we need that. Okay. Okay, so I realize this probably wasn't that critical. So CLI. Okay, so we can just do should I, or yeah, okay, so we'll do this later. Or no, we'll do it now. All right, so we're defining our entry points. And then we've got a little trick here. Um, this is let you call the all right, so this will let us call Alice's with the dash M. So let's say Alice, Alice blank. Okay, okay. Let's check out Alice's CLI. Okay. Now let's run Alice diagram. Okay, and we're gonna make this. We're gonna put should I under Alice. I still haven't figured out how to do that. There's not a great way to make all the packages install. Yeah, okay, so we can just pass them on the install command. This is just kind of tedious. Okay, what do we do with the other ones? Okay, well, we do it here, so great. Let's do it here. Okay. All right, so DFML and should I? Okay, so we've got DFML, we've got should I. So now we can say from, or let's see, import should I dot CLI, and we can say read look at the CLI. Or should I install and should I use? Okay, so let's grab should I, and we'll put should I right under Alice. And we can prefix, this stuff will all probably change, but we can prefix right now with an underscore to not override a global variable. So now um, we should be able to say should install Alice. Just make sure that we install the development versions of DFML and should I. And probably DFML feature Git, because should I will install that. I think we had something where we were going to basically dump the find links out. What is this? Okay, set up tools SCM. I'll switch this to Alice eventually. Okay. I wanted Alice to be written by Alice. All right, well, we're on a time crunch. Ah, hmm, what are we going to do? Let's try it. What time check? Okay. 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 All right, we're going to actually leave this as a requirement because we'll add it back in probably very soon, hopefully. Okay, cannot install user requested should I 1.0. Okay, okay. All right, we're just gonna loosen these version ranges. Okay, great. We got a successful install. We'll put that in a README. Okay, okay. It good. Let's say Alice. Okay, okay. So, and what did we run? So we install example should I have features get. Okay. And let's also do. Okay. Oh, we got to update our plugins. Okay. All right, we're looking at the README. We're running the command again, making sure that everything gets installed in development, or that we install everything in development mode. We're gonna go down to all of this stuff. So Alice, we'll just say Alice intersource. Okay. All right, Alice is our top level CLI. Should I has no attributes? Should I? Or should I dot CLI? All right. Okay. There we go. Should I? Alice, should I use https github.com/pdxjohnny/http test? Okay, so should I know what to do with this? What should I know what to do with? Yeah, this was SBOM stuff before SBOM. Let's see. Let's use the same example. All right, let's give this a diagram command. Examples. How could we give anything a diagram command? Well, we could hook anything with the data flow and dump the data flow. Could dump the data flow. Let's see. Okay. Hmm. Use config. Clone git oh, I think it's because this needs to be updated to use the hmm, I think it's because of the valid repo URL thing. Yeah. So we have to say, so basically this thing needs, it needs to know, so shit, I know why I didn't do this. There's line breaks that are off, whatever, god damn it. Okay. There's tutorials which reference certain lines, and we have a job that goes through and tells us when those lines need to be updated, and this will trigger that job because we're modifying this file or we're including parts of this file, and that's yeah, that's why the imports are structured the way they are, or sort of legible the way that they are. Okay, so we need. So we need to look at clone git repo, right? And we need to say, okay, valid git repository URL. Right, so this thing ain't gonna run unless it's got a valid git repository URL. Um, and that needs to be true within the context, right? And the context is the um, the context is the URL because we're using context as a string. All right, so clone git repo will not run without. I think we updated this in the manifest branch. There was a bug in the main branch. So clone git repo will not run without an input of valid git repository of definition. Valid git repository set to true. Uh, this is to prevent attempting to clone repos where clone results in an infinite hang. We catch this. We prevent this by checking if the repo is a valid repo to begin with by doing git ls remote. And if that succeeds, like check. So we check. So we by doing ls remote within check if git repository is valid or git within this operation. Clone git repo will not run without an input of definition valid get repository URL set to true. This is to prevent attempting to clone repos where clone results in an infinite hang. We prevent this by checking the repo if the we prevent this by checking if the repo is valid to begin with by doing or before clone. Prior to clone by doing git. This produces a a true valid git repository URL and a valid git repository. All right, so by doing this operation, right, we're going to produce this value of true. We are going to hard code this here to easily support file. Okay, actually, fuck that. We're just going to do it down here. So yeah, so we're going to run that valid get repository URL down here, or we're going to say, if we include this down here, then we're effectively doing an override. Um, target name. Okay, formatting issues. Okay, so now we return this list if the path is the directory, and within there we're going to use this true value for valid get repository URL, and that way we can just go ahead and we'll just throw our check valid get repository URL in here, and then that way if it returns no, we don't care because we have another one in there that's doing the override because we run all permutations. All right, there we go. And voila, a new minor version of NPM is available. Great. Okay, so we'll just put this in analysis README. All right, so here's an example invocation asking Alice, CLI invocation asking Alice if we should use a Git repo, and we'll put, add log debug. We'll say note, add log debug to any Alice command. So add log dash log space debug to any Alice CLI command to get verbose log output. So the response should be as follows. All right. All right. So we did use, okay, so Alice, should I, oh yeah, so install HTTP test. Okay, HTTP test is okay to install. Okay, great. So Alice should I use is going to become Alice should I reuse. Um, so we're just going to put so should I, right? So like we said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build on should I. Am I not on here? There we go. We're back on here. All right. So remember when we started this, the very first video, we said the first thing we're going to do is we're going to base Alice on should I. So we're going to say, Alice, should I install? Okay. So should I, Alice first ality is based around should I, and then we'll link to should I. Um, okay. So Alice's initiality is based around should I. We provide Alice specific overlays, okay, and those are covered right in the data flow deployment example. We provide Alice specific overlays, which allow us to provide specific additional allow Alice, which enable Alice to provide us with additional information on top of what should I already gives us. Um, we can also apply organizational policies to our Alice. Okay, um, so So, okay, so we can also apply organizational policies to our Alice via overlays. Via the overlay infrastructure. Okay, all right, so check if a Python package. Check if a package is something you should install from a security perspective. Does it have any CVEs? Right, and now right now this is a Python package, right? So to do take PURL or software heritage ID. And eventually we'll take a DID. All right, so, and then we're going to switch this to reuse. All right, so should I use, let me just check some guidance here. Okay. Okay, so I'll just link to the thread. Hmm. Okay, so if you're reusing something, you care about the static analysis. If you're using something, you care about the CVEs. Okay, should I reuse something, right? Reuse a Git repo in as a dependency of one of our projects, right? So then Alice, should I reuse blank, right? So Alice, should I use this thing? Okay, let us know whether it's, something that's uh, got active problems in it, you know, any, uh, so, okay, so Alice, so we will, okay, so we're going to be able to use our input definitions to take either PURLs or software heritage IDs, determine those also automatically, and determine that they're different from a Git repo URL, and then run the appropriate, translation layers there. So let's go look at, let's see, operations, inner source, DFML operations inner source, and how did we um, override our class stuff here? Okay. Okay, so we're going to modify the should I CLI a little bit here. Um, we're going to use our own should I CLI, right? And so what does that thing do? Well, let's find out. All right, so use project. So we're going to actually take should I use and rename it to should I reuse. And we're going to take should I install and rename it to um, so we can actually take should I die use, and the project stuff is basically the same as the SBOM generation. So we should probably put that. We should say Alice, you know, generate SBOM or something. Alice produce. Let's say produce. Produce is a good word. We want her to produce an SBOM, right? SBOM, and we'll say project command. Uh, all right. So Alice produce SBOM. And then should I CLI? And should I CLI? Should have a diagram. Let's see. So we want to have a diagram for all this stuff, right? So SBOM. So maybe each CLI command is like a deployment environment, right? And then as we get down, we're diagramming each deployment environment, right? So if we do a diagram, we could diagram for the top level, right? And then we could let me write that down because that's gonna be helpful. Let's put that under, where are we? You know, I think we're actually, look at that. We're in chapter 1 now. How exciting. Um, where is this? So see it when, okay, so there was a lot of, you know, and we haven't gotten, unfortunately, too far more into the blockchain stuff. Show 56 more replies. We may have done some work on this. Okay, so doing good. We're doing good. Um, this is good. Okay, so um, what we're going to make a note of. Okay, so for diagram command, for each, so treat, aha, this is, there we go. Treat each CLI command as if as a data flow as class. Each action, what is an arg parser? Each sub parser CLI command so each subparser CLI command, let's just show what we're talking about here. So if you look in, so we have this wrapper around argparse, DFFML util CLI arg, no, command. Okay, so this whole CLI util CLI is the wrapper. So when we go here, we basically look at the data class fields. See, we look at the data class fields and we create these there's this intermediate structure because there's a lot of holdover. Remember, we've been redoing the config code for the lifetime of the project, right? So hopefully soon we'll finally unify. Now that we figured out the type stuff, now we need to go implement, right? Um, but so we've got the data class fields. We iterate over them. We create these intermediate structures, these args, and then we add the args, right? So we'll get rid of that and we'll just do directly from fields. If anybody has time, that would be a really good thing to do. So and then yeah, we add arguments. So basically, what this means is that each of the so these fields within the data class, right, they become subcommands, right? Unless they have or actually, let's see, that's not actually what that part means. Um, the fields become the arguments and so we inspect the members of the class. And so any member of the class, so basically this use command when set, um, yeah, I don't have time to explain this fully, but basically you can see how the CLI works out, right? So is this command, and this is should I, right? So it's this command, and then under that you have run diagram install reuse, right? So diagram for any given command will treat the CLI command as like a data flow as class. We're the top level thing that we're running next, right? So should I run or should I install or should I reuse is um, the deployment environment, right, for that given data flow. We talked about having these sort of top level deployment environments, right? These top level switches for almost like our data flow as class. We're doing the different methods within the one data flow that we're calling. And probably triggering them using its subflows based off of conditional on the top level, right? Where we're going to pick that out and see what okay, it's run, okay, and then we're going to add the conditional, and then we'll do the subflow, and the subflow would be this run, right? So diagram makes sense as something that we would put in at every level then, because we would be able to diagram any CLI command and the different subflows, provided they're all based on data flows, which they should be, right? Eventually we will get there. So should I diagram? Okay, so should I diagram? So should I use? Okay, and so yeah, see, and then we're hiding this for last lines, right? Because that was the line chopping I was talking about, right? So we were chopping up those lines to trying to make it so that you don't see it at the end of the tutorial here. Let's see. So let me just show it. Here, right? So by chopping off the lines, lines here. Here, this is what I'm talking about, right? So this we're going to go through. So now this is going to change because we included check with valid Git repository URL, and we included this new input here, and we restructured this, right? So now if we went over here, set NU, right? Let's just update it. So what the hell? We'll update it right now. Set NU. So it used to go to 85, and it still goes to 85. Wait a minute. Oh, okay, no, that's a different file we edited. Okay, I don't even think we're looking at use. Okay, well then it doesn't matter. Then it doesn't matter. Okay, great. Um, at least for our messing around with the other file. Or yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, Yeah, because the top level one is basically, and should I is Python related. So treat each CLI command has diagram command which diagrams flow, treat sub commands as subflows with additionals, question mark. Okay, yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, and this is part 38, Alice the entity. Okay, or this is more Alice's CLI command. Alice's CLI. Alice's command line interface. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're making her command line interface. So interesting. Not know what you're doing until you're doing it. Okay, great. Okay, so that is that. And oh, we should put this on Twitter too. Maintain that chain. Ho ho. We'll finish that DID stuff at some point, maybe this weekend. Okay. So let us jump back. Okay. So what do we got? What do we got? So the SBOM command is warning, not really an SBOM command. Let's go ahead and throw a nice big warning on that. Let's go grab project. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. This was a long time ago. I don't know. Maybe I didn't know about the SPDX SBOM stuff, but this was a while ago. Okay, but the goal was the same. So we'll say self.logger.critical. All right, spell critical right. Okay, so this command does not generate an SBOM. It will soon. Okay. Let's check out what we got here. So where are these should I edits? Okay, I think we can safely add those. So we're going to commit that one that we just did. Should I project? So we have a convention by which, and the reason for this is because we're going to split out into this poly repo setup, right? And once we do that, basically we're going to do these filter branches on the commits, and we're going to pull out all the commit message. The commit messages should look good still for each repo individually, with the way that we've been formatting them, um, they shouldn't. You shouldn't even be able to. But when we get done with the second party, you shouldn't even been able to tell that they were originally in the same repo. So that'll be fun. Because we have a problem with main right now, we're gonna have to mess with it as well. Okay, so log about future SBOM production. All right, and then we're going to add this in here. So did we, Alice, should I reuse? So Alice, should I reuse this? Alice says, GTFO, you stopped editing the file in the middle. Okay, rightfully so. Okay, so should I reuse, should I install? So this would be use is should I install? So should I CLI install? So we're just tweaking this slightly for a different model here, right? Because we're going to add our overlays, and what should I thinks is install, we're going to say is use because we're going to expand beyond Python packages, right? Should I is just going to focus on Python packages. We're going to leave that alone for now. That's pretty much it's a little example, right? It doesn't need to be more than an example for DFFML. Alice is going to be a little bit more full-fledged, right? So should I run? Should I run? The hell was that? Where did that come from? Probably the other example. Okay. Um, so this is good stuff here. We have it in another file, so we can just delete it. Okay. So should I use, reuse, and then we're going to add another one, which is contribute. Right? So should I use something? Should I reuse something? Should I contribute to something? Right? Basically, what do we, and this is going to be how we can figure out basically at any given time, you know, is, for example, we talked about the tutorials a long time ago, and what if I have a different version installed, and how do we put the version information into the tutorial doc so that you could have this command which goes and double checks your environment, right? Because we all know that setting up your environment is definitely the most difficult part of actually doing anything, right? And so if we could just have Alice go and say, hey, should I use this tutorial, right? Well, okay, she may come back and say, well, your environment is, uh, you know, it's on fire. That dog on fire meme, that's your computer, and you need to clean up your computer. And you have 10 different versions of Python installed, and by default, you pick the wrong one. So you need to go fix that before you try to run this tutorial because you're going to hose your computer even more, right? So that could be, maybe some of the context that you put around should I use, right? But you can also apply your organizational overlays, which we're going to get to in a moment, right? So should I reuse and should I contribute? And so we're actually going to make a new contribute command. So we're going to say, should I CLI contribute? And we'll just capitalize that C. Okay. Should I use? Should I reuse? Should I contribute? And then diagram. All right. So should I diagram, right? That's just going to produce a diagram of the should I stuff. So Alice, oh, this is great. Oh, so much better. Okay, so should I use, where are we at with that? Should I diagram, not defined? Should I dot project? Should I project? All right, well, what's in there? Project CLI, project command, create. Okay, so there we go. So we basically, what are we doing? we're just sort of grabbing other pieces of different, we've got a lot of different little projects, right? And we've been structuring like this so that we can pull them together and overlay where we need, right? And so now it's time. Um, okay, so do we even need this inner source stuff in here? So what are we going to do with that? Uh, okay. What do we got? Okay, so a bunch of Git repo operations. Okay, so very similar. So produces a bunch of metrics. So maybe we'll call that. So Alice, should I use, should I reuse, should I contribute? Maybe we're going to throw this under should I contribute. We'll just say, should I contribute right now is the running of this inner source CLI. Should I contribute? Should I contribute CLI? And so we're going to actually, what are we going to do? Keys. Let's just leave it. No, let's just leave it as is, right? So should I contribute inner source CLI dot run dot records, and then we'll say set. Okay. All right, Alice, what can you do? Alice can do, should I? Alice, can I spell should I right? Probably not. Alice, what does should I mean? Okay, so Alice says that we can do this. Should I contribute, install, project, reuse, use? Okay, so why does she say that? Well, she says that because we subclass from should I CLI itself, and we actually don't want to do that right now. So we want is Alice, should I use, reuse, contribute? Great, that's what we want to see. So should I use? What does that do? Um, this looks like we're pointed at the wrong place. Should I use? Okay. Oh yeah, because this is read samples. Should I? Should I? This is the main one, right? So install, right? So use becomes install for now, right? So we're going to say to do overlay. Okay, yeah, it's to do overlay data flow so that in should I install, should I, so upstream, should I install is used for Python packages, is used when as part of our Python package evaluation, right? So all we have to do is just say, so because the install is an overlay, it just becomes one thing that will happen if it sees an input, right? So we don't even have necessarily have to call it in order. It's just like a thing that's going to happen, right? So if we take a PURL and we produce a Python package name and we create the input that says it's a Python package name, then should I install will just run, right? And that's all we have to do. So let's say, should I use and then HTTP test, right? Okay. Okay, let's just make sure that's right. Okay, great. Should I reuse? And what's that handy dandy trick? So quote left arrow, comma, quote right arrow, and then bash. Okay, so and looks like we got the same output. Fantastic. So Alice, should I contribute? So what happens if we say, Alice, should I contribute? Alice, should I contribute to this project? All right, well, what does Alice think? Should we contribute to this project? I think she's going to give us a very vague answer that's really just a bunch of numbers. Um, oh, let's see what she says. Oh, wow, look at that. And we'll put that in a JSON block. And then we're going to visualize that. We're going to output that JSON block. Instead of as JSON, we're going to make it a markdown file pretty soon. So let's ask Alice about the health, about the readiness, or about, let's ask info, let's ask Alice about a repo to see what she knows about the what she knows about the health of it and its community, right? This will help us make an informed decision as to if we should contribute. Should we, maybe they're not active, right? Maybe there's no maintainers. Maybe I shouldn't even bother going and writing a pull request, right? So what's the first thing you usually do? You say, I have a problem. Is there an open issue, right? If there's an open issue, then is there an open pull request, right? Is there a reason that pull request hasn't been merged? Okay, so if it looks good, they're just waiting on somebody, you can always pull down the patch, right? You might need that patch. I think that we we went over that when we were doing. There's a blog post about setting up the kernel CI environment. We had to pull down patches, right? So you don't know, and so what Alice is going to do is she's going to help us understand, how ready is this repo for my contribution, right? Are they facing a huge backlog, right? Okay, well if they're facing a huge backlog of PRs, I might go prioritize my contribution to another repo while they sort their stuff out, right? This will help us, right, as we and the build tree organization, obviously, same thing. That's why we're looking to, eventually, try to figure out what the right arrangement there is. See if maybe we can get DFML into the governance structure, right, of our maintainers, maintainers and mentors who were previously on the project, right, as they're building this new org. And this will help their new contributors figure out where are their skills, right? Where are their skills relevant, right? So if I run this because I'm going to have my overlays, right? So I can point Alice at a repo and she'll say, hey, this looks like a really good repo for you to contribute to. All the open issues have, skills that, your skill set matches, right? This is a high value target for your contribution, right? Okay, so with overlays, Alice will be able to tell us if our experience set / skill set would allow us or seems helpful to contribute to open issues. Her analysis of the repo / project will also let us know if they are ready for our contribution. Okay, so Alice, boom, we have a CLI. Fantastic. Let's just run it real quick here. Double check. Alice, should I use HTTP test? Alice, should I use HTTP test? Alice, should I reuse? Okay, so that's not a good. Oh, because yeah, okay, so that one. Okay, I think we have a setup PY. Yeah, this guy. Uh, this is a current bug with the setup PY. Uh, let's dump this in gh issue create dash t. Should I? So we fix this in should I? Alice gets it for free, right? Should I Python analyze? Um, uh, fix setup or support setup.cfg or non setup.py declarations of metadata. Right. So we may end up just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do there. Great. There we go. There's our issue. Right. So let's go ahead and right? And ideally, Alice would be hooked into our development environment, right? And she would just log that issue for us, right? Every time there's a stack trace, boom, log an issue, deduplicate, log issues, right? That way we're all communicating, right? And she can go look at the issues to see if somebody else, if she sees a stack trace, she can look at the issues, right? And she can say somebody else has already figured out this issue, right? You don't even need to bother spending the rest of the day doing this thing that somebody else already figured out, right? It's hopefully going to save a lot of time. The amount of random stack traces that we end up with during development that we like just forgot a flag here or there, right? She can just fix that for us, right? Well, she will be able to but only if we write everything down, right? And we don't do that. So, sometimes we do, like we just did, right? Okay, so bad example, but sometimes we don't have time, and she'll do it for us is part of the goal. So, and what did we name that? We named it, should I Python analyze? Okay, and I think GitHub will put in the right name for us. But okay, so I can just delete that other line. Okay, so let's pick a different one. Why don't we actually use the example from the README? So one last time. Okay, let's commit this should I stuff. And then I'm gonna take a break real quick. Examples, or no, we don't say examples because if we split out the package should I, we don't want the word example in front of the commit message. So should I use, okay, so only check, okay, so override, need to check git repo URL if path or if URL or if directory, lift local directory path given instead as opposed URL. Okay. right, so what do we got here? What happened? Um, okay, what did it do? Okay, so it saved this. Okay, so it saved this. Okay, let's get rid of this. We don't want that. So it basically, we have this temporary directory where which the source is pointed at, which goes to the current working directory. That's why we always do status and staged. Okay, you add the files, you do the status to see which files you added, so you're not accidentally missing ones when they're butted up against each other. Because if you see two here, it's easy to skip one file, right? So status, diff staged, add status, diff staged. Let's see, what do we got? What do we got? What do we got? This is a whole bunch of stuff. I don't like that. Can we make that like expandable? It's at the end of the file. It's at the end of the file. Whatever. Gives a good idea of the data. All right, let's just run. Okay, great. All right, give it one more go through. Okay, we validated all that. Okay. Python-m Alice. Right, so this little main is so that we can call Alice from there. Sometimes, why do we do that? Well, sometimes people's path does not contain the console scripts directory. In which case, instead of making people search for your console script, just export your module as a library, or export your create this main file. And this main file is just kind of like, it's just like that if name equals main, but for your module so that you can get run with -m. And then Python will just find the location of your installed module and run it, right? So what we do is, to avoid creating too many different code paths on that CLI entry, we're just going to load the entry point. And that helps us reduce our amount of variation there. Okay, so Alice, reuse initial CLI based on should I and inner source operations. All right, so let's push that. Boom. Oh, fuck. Why is this? What happened? What happened? I don't understand. Whatever. Okay, well here, let's forget that. Let's not understand. Okay, so why? Why was that different? Okay. So is this SHA different? Okay, these SHAs match, this SHA's different. All right, so override need to check. Maybe the SHAs do match. So if we walk reflogs, we can see the different states that Git has been on locally. It's kind of like, there's this sort of just cache of stuff sitting around. All right, so I got to get going. And then I'll be back pretty soon here. And we'll start again. Thanks, bye.